When my granddaughter told me I was too old for her birthday party, I quietly walked away and checked my credit card statements. 5 minutes later, I discovered $38,000 in debt I had been paying for her lifestyle. And that was just the beginning. Justice had to happen. You won't believe what I did next. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel and tell us where you're listening in the comments. My name is William Carter, and I'm 76 years old. I've been a retired mechanical engineer for the past 11 years now. Worked for the same aerospace company for 43 years and saved every penny I could for my family's future. Today, my retirement savings and investments are worth about $600,000, which I thought would help my family live comfortably. My wife Helen died from a stroke 4 years ago after 52 years of marriage. She was the love of my life and my partner in everything we built together. We had one son named David, but he died in a car accident 7 years ago when he was 48 years old. That tragedy left me with one close family member, my granddaughter Jessica, who is 25 years old now. Jessica works part-time as a social media manager, making about $30,000 per year. She lives in a nice apartment downtown and spends most of her time shopping, traveling, and going out with friends. Her lifestyle costs way more than what her salary can support, but I never questioned how she managed to afford everything because I thought she was just good with money. After David died, I started spending more time with Jessica and trying to be helpful with her expenses. "Grandpa, it's so hard to manage everything on my own," Jessica would tell me during our weekly dinners. I could see she was struggling financially, so I began quietly helping her with major costs without making her feel embarrassed about needing support. Over the past 4 years, I've been the emergency contact on her credit cards in case she ever had financial problems. Jessica told me it was just for security purposes, and I was happy to help my only remaining family member feel safe and protected. "Grandpa, you're so sweet to be my backup person," she had said when we set up the accounts. Jessica seemed grateful when I first started helping with her expenses occasionally. "Grandpa, thank you for understanding that young people have different needs than your generation," she would say during family visits. I thought Jessica appreciated having someone who cared about her success and happiness after losing her father so young. But something started bothering me about Jessica's attitude during the past few months. She began making comments about my age and capabilities that felt disrespectful during our time together. "Grandpa, you don't really understand how the modern world works," she would tell me when I offered advice about saving money or planning for the future. Jessica also started treating our family dinners like obligations rather than opportunities to spend time together. She would check her phone constantly, complain about having to drive to my house, and make excuses to leave early for social events with her friends. The personal connection we had built after David's death was disappearing as she became more focused on her social life. The real problem started when Jessica began dismissing my opinions and experiences like they had no value because of my age. "Grandpa, that's not how things work anymore," became her standard response when I shared stories about work ethic or financial responsibility. Her attitude toward my life experience was becoming increasingly disrespectful and hurtful. What bothered me most was Jessica's growing assumption that I should automatically understand and support her lifestyle choices without any explanation or appreciation. She would make statements about needing money for trips or clothes like I was supposed to approve without question. The gratitude I had initially received was being replaced by entitlement and expectation. Yesterday was Jessica's 25th birthday, and I had been looking forward to celebrating this milestone with my only granddaughter. I arrived at her apartment party at 7 o'clock with a homemade chocolate cake and a birthday gift. expecting to spend quality time with the most important person left in my family. The party was full of Jessica's young friends from work and social media, all dressed in expensive clothes and talking about trips and purchases that seemed way beyond what people their age should be able to afford. Everyone was polite to me, but I could tell they thought I was out of place at their celebration. Jessica was busy entertaining her guests and barely acknowledged my arrival or the effort I had put into making her favorite cake from scratch. When I tried to join conversations about her work or recent activities, she would change the subject or direct her attention to other people who were more interesting to her. That's when Jessica decided to make the comment that would change everything between us forever. Now let me tell you exactly how I ended up spending $38,000 while Jessica learned to treat me like an old man who didn't matter. This story starts 4 years ago when my son David died in that terrible car accident, leaving Jessica alone in the world with only her elderly grandfather to help her through life. I was determined to make sure she never felt abandoned or financially insecure after losing her father so young. Jessica was just 21 when David died, fresh out of college and trying to start her career in social media marketing. "Grandpa, I'm scared about managing everything by myself," she told me during David's funeral arrangements. "Dad always helped me with money decisions and emergencies." I could see she was overwhelmed by grief and financial responsibility, so I promised to be there for whatever she needed. The first time I helped Jessica with money was 3 months after the funeral when her car broke down and needed expensive repairs. "Grandpa, I can't afford $800 for transmission work," she said, crying over the phone. "I don't know what I'm supposed to do without Dad to help me." I drove straight to the repair shop and paid the bill because I couldn't stand seeing my only granddaughter struggle alone. After that car repair, Jessica started calling me whenever she had financial emergencies or unexpected expenses. Rent deposit for a better apartment, $2,000. Medical bills when she got sick and missed work, $1,500. New laptop for her social media job, $1,800. I was happy to help because she seemed genuinely grateful, and it made me feel useful after Helen's death. "Grandpa, you're saving my life with this help," Jessica would tell me sincerely after each payment. "I promise I'll pay you back when my career takes off and I'm making better money." Her appreciation made me feel like I was honoring David's memory by taking care of his daughter during difficult times. But the expenses started getting bigger and more frequent as Jessica got comfortable with my financial support. Designer clothes for work networking events, $1,200. Professional photography for her social media portfolio, $900. Weekend trips to conferences and industry meetings, $2,000 each time. The grateful granddaughter was slowly becoming someone who expected help without much appreciation. The credit card arrangement started when Jessica called me panicking about a declined payment during a work trip last year. "Grandpa, I'm stuck at a hotel in Los Angeles and my card won't work," she said frantically. "Can you be an emergency contact on my account so this never happens again?" It seemed like reasonable security planning for a young woman traveling alone for work. "Jessica, I'll add my information to your accounts just in case you need backup," I told her during our next dinner together. "But this should only be for real emergencies when you're traveling or something unexpected happens." She assured me the arrangement was temporary and would only be used for serious situations when she couldn't handle expenses herself. That credit card emergency contact turned into something completely different over the past 12 months. Jessica began using the cards for regular shopping, dining out, and entertainment without telling me she was charging expenses to accounts I was responsible for. The young woman I thought was learning financial responsibility was actually building debt in my name. The most concerning part was Jessica's changing attitude toward money and budgeting during our conversations. "Grandpa, young people today have different financial priorities than your generation," she would tell me when I suggested saving money or living within her means. "Social media careers require investments in appearance and networking that older people don't understand." Jessica started making assumptions about my wealth and availability to fund her lifestyle choices. "Grandpa, you have plenty of money saved up and no one else to spend it on," became typical comments when she wanted expensive items. "Shouldn't you be happy to help your only granddaughter succeed in her career?" Her entitlement was replacing the gratitude I had initially received. During recent months, Jessica began treating my financial support like automatic rights rather than generous gifts from her grandfather. She would mention needing money for trips or clothes like I was supposed to provide funding without question. The personal connection and appreciation were disappearing as she became more focused on what I could give her. What bothered me most was Jessica's growing dismissive attitude toward my advice about money management and life experience. "Grandpa, that's old-fashioned thinking," she would say when I suggested budgeting or saving for emergencies. "Modern young people handle finances differently than people from your generation." Her disrespect for my wisdom was hurtful and concerning. Last week, I started getting worried about Jessica's spending patterns when I noticed her social media posts showing expensive restaurants, designer shopping, and luxury travel that seemed way beyond her part-time salary. Something doesn't add up about her lifestyle, I thought to myself while looking at photos of $500 dinners and $1,000 shopping trips. Yesterday at her birthday party, Jessica was about to show me exactly what she thought about the grandfather who had been quietly funding her comfortable lifestyle for 4 years. Let me take you back to that terrible birthday party when Jessica said the words that started my perfect financial revenge. It was her 25th birthday celebration at her downtown apartment, and I had been looking forward to spending time with my only granddaughter. I arrived with homemade chocolate cake and a thoughtful gift, expecting to enjoy a nice evening together with the most important person left in my family. The party was crowded with Jessica's young friends, all talking loudly about expensive trips and shopping sprees that seemed impossible on their entry-level salaries. Everyone was polite when Jessica introduced me, but I could tell they thought I was out of place at their trendy celebration. "This is my grandfather, William," she said quickly before turning her attention back to more interesting guests. I spent the first hour trying to make conversation with Jessica's friends and learning about their careers and interests. Most of them worked in social media, marketing, or entertainment, making similar money to Jessica, but somehow affording lifestyles that cost way more than their paychecks. "We just know how to live well," one young man told me when I asked about their expensive hobbies. Jessica was busy playing hostess and barely acknowledged the effort I had put into making her favorite cake from scratch using Helen's old recipe. When I mentioned the cake during a quiet moment, she gave me a quick thank you before rushing off to take photos with her friends. The personal connection I thought we shared was nowhere to be found during her big celebration. I tried to join conversations about Jessica's work projects and recent travel, but she would redirect her attention to other people whenever I started talking. "Grandpa, let me introduce you to someone else," became her standard response when I attempted to participate in discussions about topics I found interesting. Her dismissive attitude was hurtful, but I assumed she was just excited about her party. The moment that changed everything happened when I offered to help Jessica serve drinks and food to her guests. I had noticed she seemed stressed about managing everything alone, so I thought some assistance would be appreciated. "Jessica, would you like me to help pass out the cake or refill drinks for everyone?" I asked politely during a brief break in her socializing. That's when Jessica delivered the words that shattered our family relationship completely. "Grandpa, you're too old for this," she said with shocking cruelty in front of several of her friends. "This is a young person's party, and you don't really fit in with what we're doing here." Her words hit me like a physical blow from someone I had loved and supported unconditionally for 25 years. "Jessica, what do you mean I'm too old?" I asked, stunned by her declaration that I didn't fit in at her birthday celebration. "I'm your grandfather, and I just wanted to help make your party successful." I couldn't process how someone could make such a hurtful statement to the person who had been supporting them financially for years. "You don't understand how modern parties work," Jessica continued with increasing embarrassment about my presence. "My friends and I have different interests and energy than people from your generation. Maybe you should head home and let us enjoy the rest of the evening." Her attack on my age and relevance was devastating and completely unexpected from my only granddaughter. Several of her friends looked uncomfortable as they witnessed Jessica's cruel treatment of her elderly grandfather. "Maybe that was a little harsh," one young woman said quietly, but Jessica dismissed the concern and continued focusing on her other guests. The humiliation of being rejected publicly by my own family member was almost unbearable. I stood there in Jessica's living room, surrounded by young people enjoying a lifestyle I didn't know I was funding, while being told I was too old to participate in my granddaughter's life. The man whose generosity had made her comfortable living possible had just been dismissed like some unwelcome burden at her celebration. "The party will be more fun, without having to worry about including someone from a different generation," Jessica added with a dismissive laugh. "You probably don't understand our music or conversations anyway." Her casual cruelty toward the person who had supported her through grief and financial struggles showed complete disrespect for everything I had done. That evening, I drove home alone and sat in my study thinking about Jessica's terrible words. The granddaughter who had called me too old for her life had no idea that William Carter controlled every aspect of her financial security. Her comfortable assumptions about money and lifestyle were about to face serious consequences. I pulled out my wallet and found the credit card statements I had been receiving for months without paying much attention to the details. "Time to see exactly what Jessica thinks she's too old to appreciate," I said to myself as I started reviewing the expenses that would shock me completely. 5 minutes after looking at those credit card bills, I discovered the $38,000 secret that would change everything between us forever. After Jessica's cruel declaration that I was too old for her birthday party, I drove home alone to the empty house where Helen and I had lived for 34 years. The celebration I had looked forward to all week had turned into a nightmare of disrespect and family betrayal. Sitting in my study that evening, I pulled out the credit card statements that had been arriving monthly without me paying close attention to the details. The first statement I opened was from Jessica's main credit card account, where I was listed as the emergency contact. Current balance: $14,600. I stared at that number thinking there had to be some mistake, because Jessica had told me the card was only for emergencies when she traveled for work. But as I read through the charges, I realized this was no emergency spending. Designer clothing from expensive boutiques, $800 here, $1,200 there. Fancy restaurants where single dinners cost more than some people spend on groceries all week. Luxury hotels in cities Jessica had never mentioned visiting for work. The emergency contact arrangement had become her personal funding source for a lifestyle I never knew I was paying for. The second credit card statement was even worse. Balance: $11,400 for purchases over the past 8 months. Professional photography sessions, $900 each time. Hair and makeup services, $400 monthly. spa treatments and beauty procedures, $600 every few weeks. Jessica was using my financial responsibility to fund a luxury lifestyle completely beyond her actual income. But the third credit card statement was what really shocked me. Balance: $12,000 in charges from the past 6 months alone. Weekend trips to expensive resorts, $3,000 each time. Designer handbags and shoes, $1,500 for single purchases. Concert tickets and entertainment events, $500 for nights out with friends. Everything Jessica had been posting on social media was being charged to accounts I was responsible for. I found receipts and statements going back over 18 months showing a pattern of escalating spending that Jessica had been hiding from me completely. The young woman I thought was learning financial responsibility had been building massive debt in my name while treating me like I was too old to understand her modern lifestyle. The dining expenses alone were shocking when I added them up. $200 dinners multiple times per week. $300 brunches with friends every weekend. $400 wine tastings and social events. Jessica was spending more on food and entertainment in 1 month than I spent on groceries for an entire year. The travel charges revealed trips Jessica had never mentioned to me during our weekly dinners. Miami Beach Resort, $4,000 for 5 days. New York City shopping weekend, $3,500, including hotels and meals. Los Angeles networking conference, $5,000 for what was supposed to be a business expense. She had been living a secret luxury lifestyle funded by my retirement savings. Shopping purchases showed Jessica's complete lack of financial restraint or appreciation for money. $800 shoes, $1,500 purses, $2,000 designer coats, $3,000 jewelry purchases. Everything she wore and carried had been charged to cards that ultimately came out of my carefully saved retirement funds. The most painful discovery was finding charges for gifts Jessica had given to her friends and romantic interests. $500 presents for friends' birthdays. $800 dinners where she paid for entire groups. $1,200 weekend trips she had funded for her social circle. My granddaughter was using my money to impress people who probably had no idea where her generosity was really coming from. Beauty and fitness expenses revealed another area where Jessica was spending without limits. Monthly gym memberships at luxury facilities, $200. Personal training sessions, $300 weekly. Professional massage therapy, $400 monthly. Cosmetic treatments and procedures, $1,500 every few months. She was maintaining her appearance with money I had saved over decades of careful budgeting. Technology and equipment purchases showed Jessica's assumption that expensive gadgets were necessities rather than luxuries. New iPhone every year, $1,200 each time. Professional camera equipment, $3,000. Laptop upgrades, $2,000 annually. Home entertainment systems, $4,000 for equipment she claimed was needed for work. The total amount when I added everything together was $38,400 in debt accumulated over the past 18 months. Jessica had been charging her entire lifestyle to credit cards, where I was responsible for payments, while treating me like I was too old to understand her financial needs. My phone had been silent all evening, with no calls from Jessica to apologize for her cruel birthday behavior or thank me for attending her celebration. The granddaughter whose luxury lifestyle I had been unknowingly funding couldn't even be bothered to check on her grandfather after treating him so disrespectfully. Looking at these credit card statements made Jessica's birthday behavior even more insulting than I had realized during the party. The young woman who had called me too old for her social life was living a lifestyle funded entirely by the grandfather she had publicly dismissed and humiliated. Sitting there in Helen's favorite chair that night, I felt something I hadn't experienced since my wife's death 4 years earlier. I felt like I had real power over someone who had hurt me deeply and taken advantage of my love and trust. The granddaughter who thought I was too old was about to discover exactly what losing my financial support really meant. Tomorrow, I would start the process that would teach Jessica what being too old really meant when applied to paying her bills. The morning after Jessica's cruel birthday attack, I woke up in my empty house with a clear plan about what I needed to do to teach her about respect and financial consequences. She thought she could call me too old for her life, while having no idea that William Carter was funding every aspect of her comfortable lifestyle. Jessica had dismissed her grandfather without understanding that her luxurious assumptions depended completely on my continued financial support and credit card backing. I spent the morning organizing my strategy for maximum impact on Jessica's understanding of who really controlled her comfortable life. This wasn't going to be some emotional outburst or angry confrontation that she could dismiss as her grandfather's hurt feelings. This was going to be a calculated financial demonstration that would permanently change her assumptions about independence from William Carter's involvement in her security. The first call I made was to my credit card company at 8:30 sharp the morning after her birthday party. I need to review the emergency contact arrangements on my granddaughter's accounts, I said calmly to the customer service representative. There have been some concerning spending patterns that require immediate attention and possible account modifications. The company would understand my legal authority to make changes since I was financially responsible for all charges. Mr. Carter, I can see you're listed as the emergency contact and financial guarantor on 3 credit card accounts, the representative confirmed as we reviewed Jessica's spending history. The total current balance across all accounts is $38,412 accumulated over the past 18 months. Hearing that number spoken out loud made Jessica's birthday behavior even more insulting than I had realized. I decided to remove myself from Jessica's credit card accounts immediately, rather than waiting to discuss the situation with her first. $38,000 in debt would become her personal responsibility without any safety net from the grandfather she had called too old. The shock would be educational about taking financial supporters for granted. But I also wanted to time the account changes in a way that would teach Jessica the most important lessons about appreciation and family relationships. I want to cancel my emergency contact status effective immediately, I explained to the representative. All future payments and account responsibility should be transferred to the primary cardholder starting today. The complete elimination of her financial security would happen within 24 hours. The timing of this credit card removal would be crucial for maximum impact on Jessica's comfortable assumptions about her lifestyle funding. I decided to let her discover the changes naturally when her next purchases were declined, rather than warning her about the consequences of disrespecting her financial supporter. I calculated the complete disruption this would cause to Jessica's daily routine and social activities. Without my credit backing, she would need to fund her luxury lifestyle through her $30,000 annual salary from part-time social media work. Her expensive dinners, designer shopping, and travel plans would end immediately when the cards stopped working. But more importantly, Jessica would discover that her cruel attitude toward family relationships had eliminated the financial foundation of everything she enjoyed. The grandfather who was supposedly too old to understand her modern lifestyle would no longer be involved in funding her comfortable assumptions about money and spending. I also planned to document everything that had happened during the birthday party confrontation for when Jessica inevitably called to complain about her credit problems. If she tried to minimize her disrespectful behavior or claim that losing financial support was excessive punishment, I needed to be prepared with detailed records of her exact words and hostile attitude. The most satisfying part of my planning was knowing that Jessica's desire to exclude me from her social life would be granted in exactly the way she didn't want. She had been embarrassed by my presence at her party and didn't want me involved in her modern lifestyle. Now she would have the complete independence she had demanded, along with the financial responsibility that came with it. I spent the afternoon reviewing all my financial records to make sure Jessica couldn't challenge my right to remove credit card support based on promises or family expectations. The accounts were in my name with my credit rating backing her spending, not some legal obligation that protected her lifestyle regardless of her behavior toward the person providing it. The credit card company called me back that evening to confirm that all changes had been processed successfully. Mr. Carter, effective immediately, you are no longer responsible for charges on the 3 accounts previously held by Jessica Carter, the representative explained. All future spending will require her personal approval and creditworthiness without your financial backing. The power to completely alter Jessica's lifestyle was now in motion. I also prepared talking points for when I would inevitably have to explain my decision to other family friends and community members. Jessica made it very clear that I'm too old for her modern lifestyle, I would say calmly. I'm simply ensuring that people who don't appreciate family support learn to provide for themselves. The logic would be unassailable and completely based on Jessica's own cruel words. That evening, I drove by Jessica's apartment building, where she was probably enjoying her comfortable evening routine while having no idea that her birthday cruelty had already started the process of losing her financial security. The granddaughter who thought I was too old was about to discover exactly what that independence was worth financially. Over the weekend, I watched Jessica's social media posts showing her normal lifestyle, while having no knowledge that her cruel declaration had eliminated the credit backing that made everything possible. 3 days after I removed myself from Jessica's credit card accounts, my phone started ringing frantically on Thursday evening. It was Jessica calling me in complete panic about something that had happened during her dinner out with friends. "Grandpa, my credit cards aren't working," she said urgently. "I tried to pay for dinner tonight and all 3 cards were declined. There has to be some kind of mistake with the bank systems." "Jessica, that sounds like a credit problem," I replied calmly, like I had no idea what could be causing her financial difficulties. Credit card companies sometimes have technical issues or account reviews that affect spending limits. I wanted to hear exactly how Jessica had discovered the consequences of her birthday behavior before confirming her worst fears about losing my financial support. "Grandpa, the restaurant manager said my accounts show insufficient credit and suggested I contact the bank immediately," Jessica continued with worry growing in her voice. "I was so embarrassed in front of my friends when none of my cards worked for a $400 dinner." She was starting to understand that her cruel birthday words might have triggered serious changes to her comfortable financial situation. I stayed completely calm while listening to Jessica's growing panic about her lifestyle being threatened. "Jessica, maybe you should call the credit card companies directly," I said matter-of-factly. "Sometimes account holders need to verify their personal financial information when spending patterns change." I was enjoying her slow realization that calling me too old might have cost her the credit backing that funded everything. "Grandpa, I already called the credit card companies," Jessica said frantically. "They told me that you're no longer listed as the emergency contact or financial guarantor on any of my accounts. When did you make changes to my credit arrangements?" She was starting to connect her birthday declaration with the financial crisis that was now threatening her entire lifestyle. "Jessica, what makes you think I should remain responsible for your debt?" I asked innocently. Are you suggesting that calling your grandfather too old for your life shouldn't have any consequences for financial arrangements? I wanted her to directly acknowledge her cruel birthday words before revealing the full scope of their impact on her security. That's when Jessica began realizing there might be serious repercussions for her birthday declaration that I didn't fit in with her modern lifestyle. "Grandpa, please tell me you didn't remove your support because of what I said during my party," she said desperately. "We can work out any family disagreements without involving my credit accounts and financial stability." The panic in her voice told me she was starting to understand that disrespecting financial supporters could affect her comfortable assumptions. "Jessica, what family disagreements are you worried about?" I asked directly. "I thought you made it very clear that I'm too old for your social life and modern lifestyle." I wanted her to repeat her cruel words and understand exactly what she had said to her generous grandfather. Within an hour of our phone conversation, Jessica showed up at my house unannounced, looking completely panicked and defeated. She had left work early and driven straight to my home to confront me about the credit changes that were threatening her entire way of living. "Grandpa, we need to talk about whatever you've done to my credit card accounts," she said frantically as she stood on my front porch. "Come in, Jessica," I said calmly, enjoying her obvious distress about facing consequences for birthday actions. "What seems to be the problem with your personal financial management?" I wanted to hear her explain her panic before revealing the full scope of what her party behavior had cost her. Jessica sat down in my living room and started listing her fears about losing the lifestyle she had grown accustomed to over the past 18 months. "Grandpa, if you've removed your credit backing because you're angry about birthday comments, you're going to destroy my financial stability," she said frantically. "My apartment rent, car payments, and credit card minimums depend on having that emergency support available when I need it." Her confession revealed how completely her comfortable existence depended on my continued generosity. "Jessica, why would your financial stability depend on someone you called too old?" I asked patiently. "I thought you made it clear that I don't fit in with your modern lifestyle and social activities." I wanted her to understand that her dismissive attitude had created this crisis through her own disrespectful words and entitled behavior. "Grandpa, I was embarrassed about having my grandfather at a young person's party and said something stupid," Jessica replied desperately, trying to minimize her cruel birthday attack. "You know how much I appreciate everything you've done for me since Dad died." But her explanation ignored the specific cruelty of publicly calling someone too old at their own granddaughter's celebration. I decided it was time to give her a hint about the consequences her birthday behavior had created for her financial future. "Jessica, when you told me I was too old for your party, what did you think would happen to credit arrangements I was providing for someone who felt ashamed of her grandfather?" I asked calmly. "Did you expect me to continue backing debt for someone who publicly dismissed me as irrelevant?" "Grandpa, what are you saying?" Jessica asked with growing dread in her voice. She was starting to realize that her cruel words might have permanently damaged her financial prospects. "Are you actually planning to leave me responsible for $38,000 in debt because of one conversation at my birthday party?" Her question revealed that she finally understood the seriousness of disrespecting the person who controlled her credit security. The granddaughter who had called me too old was learning that financial support and family relationships work together when it comes to credit backing and lifestyle funding. After Jessica's panicked visit about losing her credit card support, I realized I needed solid evidence to justify my decision to remove financial backing permanently. If Jessica was going to challenge my right to stop funding her lifestyle or claim that her birthday behavior wasn't serious enough to justify losing $38,000 in credit support, I wanted bulletproof documentation of 4 years of growing entitlement and diminishing appreciation. I spent the next day gathering evidence that told the complete story of Jessica's entitled attitude toward my generosity. I started by organizing every credit card statement and receipt from the past 18 months when Jessica's spending had escalated dramatically. The evidence showed a clear pattern of increasing luxury purchases that had nothing to do with basic living expenses or work requirements. Designer clothing receipts, $800 for single shopping trips that happened multiple times per month. Restaurant charges, $400 dinners every weekend with friends who never contributed to the costs. The travel expenses revealed Jessica's assumption that expensive vacations were normal parts of her lifestyle, rather than special treats funded by her grandfather's retirement savings. Miami resort weekend, $4,200 including airfare, luxury hotel, and spa treatments. New York shopping trip, $3,800 for hotels, meals, and designer purchases. California wine country tour, $5,000 for accommodations and tastings that lasted 4 days. I found receipts showing Jessica's complete lack of financial restraint when it came to beauty and personal care expenses. Monthly hair appointments at expensive salons, $350 every 4 weeks. Professional makeup sessions, $200 for social events and photo shoots. Spa treatments and massage therapy, $400 monthly for services she claimed were necessary for her social media career. But the most important evidence was the gradual change in Jessica's attitude toward my financial support over the past 2 years. Early thank you messages were genuine and detailed. "Grandpa, your help with my car repair means everything to my independence and security. I'm so grateful to have family who cares about my success after losing Dad." Those heartfelt expressions had slowly disappeared as Jessica became comfortable with unlimited spending on my credit. I documented specific instances where Jessica had questioned my spending decisions while expecting continued support for her lifestyle choices. "Grandpa, why do you need to save so much money when you could help me get a better apartment?" she had said during dinner 6 months ago. Young people today need different things than your generation required when you were starting out. Her entitled tone ignored everything I had already provided. The social media evidence was particularly revealing about Jessica's public attitude toward the lifestyle I was funding. Photos from expensive restaurants never mentioned who paid for the meals. Posts about designer purchases and luxury travel didn't acknowledge the credit cards that made everything possible. Jessica was happy to show off the benefits of my generosity while keeping my contributions completely invisible to her followers. Shopping receipts showed Jessica's assumption that expensive items were necessities rather than luxuries funded by her grandfather's careful saving. $1,500 handbags purchased monthly, $800 shoes for special occasions every few weeks, $2,000 coats and designer outfits for social events. Everything Jessica wore and carried had been charged to accounts backed by my retirement funds. I found records of Jessica's gift-giving that revealed how she was using my money to impress friends and romantic interests. Birthday presents for friends, $500 each time. Anniversary dinners she funded, for couples, $800 including wine and entertainment. Weekend trips she paid for when friends couldn't afford to join her social activities, $1,200 per person for accommodations and meals. The fitness and wellness expenses showed another area where Jessica treated luxury services like basic requirements. Personal training sessions, $300 weekly at an exclusive gym. Professional massage therapy, $400 monthly for stress relief and muscle recovery. nutrition consultations and meal planning, $600 monthly for services she claimed were essential for her career. Technology purchases revealed Jessica's pattern of buying expensive equipment and immediately wanting upgrades funded through my credit backing. Professional camera gear, $4,000 for social media content creation. Latest smartphone models, $1,200 annually for devices she claimed were work necessities. Laptop and computer equipment, $3,000 for systems that were replaced every 18 months. Most importantly, I found evidence of Jessica's complete lack of genuine appreciation for the financial security I had provided since David's death. "I'm so lucky that everything works out for my lifestyle," she had told friends during conversations I overheard. "Good things just seem to happen when I need them most." Her casual assumption that luxury was normal showed no understanding that my credit was funding her comfort. The birthday party evidence was the final piece that justified removing her financial support completely. "You're too old for this," were direct quotes that multiple people had witnessed. Jessica's cruel declaration that I didn't fit in with her modern lifestyle had been made publicly, making her words even more humiliating to the grandfather funding her celebration. Tomorrow, I would use all this evidence to show everyone exactly why Jessica had lost her credit support and comfortable assumptions about lifestyle funding. 2 weeks after Jessica discovered her credit cards had been canceled, I decided it was time for the family meeting that would teach everyone exactly what calling your grandfather too old really costs financially. I had gathered all the evidence about Jessica's spending, and several family friends had started asking questions about why she seemed so stressed lately. Jessica thought she was coming to Sunday dinner at my house, but she was actually about to witness the most expensive lesson of her 25 years about respect and financial responsibility. "Grandpa, thank you for inviting me over," Jessica said nervously as she arrived at my house. "I've been hoping we could talk about the credit card situation and work out some kind of arrangement." Her anxious tone showed she was still worried about managing her lifestyle without my financial backing supporting her spending habits. I had invited my longtime neighbors Bill and Margaret Thompson, plus my church friend Robert Chen and his wife Linda. "Jessica, I've asked some family friends to join us today because I want witnesses to our conversation about money and respect," I said calmly as everyone gathered in my living room. "There are some important lessons here that other people should understand too." Jessica looked uncomfortable as she realized this wasn't going to be a private discussion about restoring her credit support. "Grandpa, why do we need other people involved in our personal family business?" she asked cautiously. "Can't we work out our differences without making this a public conversation about private matters?" But she had no idea what evidence I was about to share with everyone. I pulled out the first set of credit card statements that would shock everyone completely. "Jessica has accumulated $38,412 in debt over the past 18 months, I announced to the room. All of this spending was charged to accounts where I was the financial guarantor without my knowledge of the specific purchases. The gasps from my friends showed their immediate understanding of the situation. Bill Thompson stared at the statements with growing amazement. "William, that's more money than most young people make in an entire year," he said incredulously. "How does someone spend that much on credit cards while working part-time?" His question made Jessica's face turn red with embarrassment as she realized the full extent of her spending was being revealed publicly. I started reading specific charges that would educate everyone about Jessica's lifestyle assumptions. $400 dinners multiple times per week, $1,500 handbags purchased monthly, $5,000 vacation trips every few months. The room became silent as people processed the magnitude of Jessica's entitled spending patterns. "Jessica, how did you afford all this on your social media salary?" Margaret Thompson asked directly. "That's luxury spending that most retired people couldn't manage even with full pensions." Her question highlighted the disconnect between Jessica's income and her actual lifestyle costs that had been funded by my retirement savings. Jessica tried to minimize the seriousness of her spending and defend her financial choices. "Those purchases were investments in my career and social media presence," she said desperately. "Young people today need to spend money on appearance and networking to succeed in modern industries." But her explanation sounded hollow when faced with the actual numbers. Robert Chen examined the travel receipts with increasing disbelief. "William, these vacation expenses are more than my wife and I spend on travel in 3 years combined," he said amazedly. $5,000 for a single weekend trip is beyond most people's annual recreation budgets. His comment emphasized how completely Jessica's expectations had been disconnected from normal financial reality. I pulled out the shopping receipts that showed Jessica's most excessive purchases. $800 shoes, $2,000 coats, $3,000 jewelry for casual social events. Each item I mentioned caused more shocked reactions from people who understood the value of money and careful spending habits. "Jessica, did you ever consider that your grandfather was paying for all this luxury?" Linda Chen asked pointedly. "These purchases represent months of work income for most people your age." Her direct question forced Jessica to confront the reality that other people now understood her entitled behavior. The most damaging evidence was Jessica's birthday party behavior that had triggered my decision to remove financial support. After accumulating all this debt on my credit, Jessica told me at her birthday party that I was too old for her social life, I explained to everyone. She publicly dismissed me as irrelevant while living off money I had saved over decades of careful budgeting. Bill Thompson shook his head in amazement at Jessica's disrespectful attitude. "William, you've been more generous to this young woman than most grandparents could ever afford," he said firmly. "Being told you're too old by someone whose lifestyle you're funding is completely unacceptable behavior." His support gave me confidence that my decision had been appropriate and justified. The evidence was overwhelming, and everyone in the room understood exactly why Jessica had lost her financial support. "Young lady, your grandfather deserves respect and appreciation, not cruel dismissal," Margaret Thompson said sternly to Jessica. "Learning to live within your actual means will be good for your character development." The community support was clear and unanimous. The granddaughter who had called me too old was learning what public accountability really meant when applied to financial responsibility and family respect. After I revealed Jessica's complete spending history to our family friends, she sat there in complete shock while everyone processed the $38,000 debt she had accumulated on my credit. The public exposure of her entitled behavior had left her speechless and humiliated in front of people who now understood exactly what kind of granddaughter she had been to someone who loved her unconditionally. Jessica's comfortable assumptions about financial support had been shattered by her own cruel birthday words. "Grandpa, please can we talk privately about this situation?" Jessica said desperately, her voice shaking as she realized the magnitude of what her party behavior had cost her financially. "I don't think our personal family business should be discussed in front of other people like this." Her panic was obvious as she faced the reality that calling me too old had eliminated her entire lifestyle funding permanently. "Jessica, you made your disrespect public at your birthday party," I replied calmly, staying in complete control of the situation. Now, the consequences of that behavior will be public too, so other people can learn from your mistakes. I wanted her to understand that cruel words have lasting results that can't be hidden or minimized through private conversations. Bill Thompson looked directly at Jessica with disappointment about her attitude toward my generosity. "Young lady, your grandfather has been more generous than most people could ever afford," he said firmly. Telling someone they're too old while living off their retirement savings shows terrible character and judgment. His criticism made Jessica realize that community members now understood her entitled behavior completely. Jessica tried to minimize her birthday cruelty and convince everyone that she deserved another chance to restore financial support. "I was stressed about turning 25 and said something stupid that I didn't really mean," she said frantically. "Grandpa knows how much I appreciate everything he's done for me since Dad died." But her explanation ignored the calculated nature of her public dismissal at her own celebration. Margaret Thompson shook her head at Jessica's attempt to excuse her disrespectful behavior. "Stress doesn't make people cruel to family members who love them," she said pointedly. "You need to learn that actions have consequences, especially when you hurt people who have sacrificed for your comfort." Her wisdom highlighted the importance of personal responsibility and appreciation. After listening to Jessica beg for forgiveness and financial restoration for over an hour, I was ready to announce my conditions for any future relationship with her. "Jessica, here are my requirements if you want any personal contact with me going forward," I said clearly. "First, you will get a full-time job and start paying your own credit card debt without any help from me. Second, you will demonstrate through your actions that you understand the difference between necessities and luxuries," I continued. "No more designer shopping, expensive dinners, or luxury travel until you've learned to live within your actual income." Jessica was nodding desperately, willing to agree to anything that might restore some hope of financial support. "Third, you will treat me with genuine respect and appreciation, not because you want money, but because I'm your grandfather who loved you through everything," I concluded. "I will not tolerate being dismissed as too old by someone whose lifestyle I was funding." Jessica agreed immediately to all my conditions, because she had no choice if she wanted any relationship with me. However, I had one more announcement that shocked Jessica completely. "Jessica, the credit card support is permanently gone regardless of whether you meet these conditions," I said calmly. "Your $38,000 in debt is now your personal responsibility to handle through your own work and budgeting." Her face went completely white as she realized her comfortable financial assumptions were destroyed forever. "Jessica, you said I was too old for your modern lifestyle, so now you can manage that lifestyle without help from someone you considered irrelevant," I explained. $38,000 will teach you lessons about money and respect that you should have learned years ago." The perfect justice in my decision was clear to everyone in the room. Robert Chen nodded approvingly at my boundary setting with entitled family members. "William, you're teaching important lessons about earning support through character, rather than expecting it through family connections," he said supportively. "Jessica will become a better person by facing the real consequences of her choices and behavior." His validation confirmed that my decision was appropriate and necessary. Jessica broke down crying as she faced the practical implications of losing financial support and managing debt through her part-time salary. "Grandpa, how am I supposed to pay minimum payments on $38,000 while covering rent and basic expenses?" she sobbed. "My social media income can barely handle my apartment costs without credit card bills." Her confession revealed how completely her lifestyle had depended on money she had never earned. "Jessica, maybe you should have thought about that before telling your financial supporter he was too old for your life," I said without sympathy. "You wanted independence from my involvement, so now you have the complete freedom you demanded at your birthday party." The education about consequences was complete, and Jessica was finally understanding that disrespecting generous family members has permanent costs. Linda Chen offered Jessica some practical advice about managing financial responsibility. "Young lady, you'll need to find full-time work and create a strict budget that prioritizes debt payments over entertainment," she said kindly but firmly. "Learning to live within your means will be challenging but good for your character development." Her guidance showed that accountability could lead to personal growth. The granddaughter who had called me too old had learned the permanent cost of disrespecting the person who had made her comfortable life possible. 6 months have passed since I removed Jessica from my credit card accounts, and I'm here today to tell you exactly how my life changed after setting clear boundaries with a granddaughter who had taken my generosity completely for granted. The shock Jessica faced when she lost her financial support taught her lessons about respect and consequences that her comfortable assumptions had never required her to learn. Jessica followed through on every condition I had set for maintaining any personal relationship, though she would never get another dollar of credit support from her grandfather. She found full-time work at a marketing agency making $45,000 annually, which forced her to budget carefully and prioritize debt payments over luxury purchases. "Grandpa, I never realized how hard it is to manage money when you actually have to earn everything yourself," Jessica admitted during a recent visit. She also started treating me with genuine respect during our monthly dinners, rather than the dismissive attitude I had received for years. No more comments about being too old to understand modern life. No more assumptions about my money being available for her lifestyle improvements. "Grandpa, thank you for still being willing to have a relationship with me after how terribly I treated you," Jessica said genuinely during our last conversation. The debt repayment process became Jessica's primary focus after discovering that $38,000 doesn't disappear through apologies or good intentions. She moved to a smaller apartment to reduce rent costs, sold designer items to raise cash, and started working weekend freelance projects to increase her income. "Grandpa, I'm actually learning discipline and work ethic that I never developed when everything was easy," she told me last month. Most importantly, Jessica started showing genuine appreciation for basic family relationships, rather than viewing me as some automatic source of financial benefits to be managed for maximum advantage. "Grandpa, I'm grateful that you still want to spend time with me despite my cruel birthday behavior," became regular expressions of gratitude. I realize now how much I took for granted while assuming I deserved support, just because I was your granddaughter. My financial security improved dramatically after removing Jessica's spending from my retirement budget. The money I had been unknowingly spending on her luxury lifestyle was redirected to my own comfort and charitable giving in the community. My stress levels decreased significantly once I no longer worried about Jessica's entitled attitude toward my generosity. I also started spending more time with friends and church activities rather than worrying about Jessica's financial emergencies and lifestyle demands. "William, you seem more peaceful and confident lately," my neighbor Bill Thompson observed during one of our weekly conversations. "Standing up for your dignity was good for your overall well-being and self-respect." He was right that protecting my boundaries had improved my happiness considerably. The community response to my boundary setting was overwhelmingly supportive from neighbors, church members, and family friends who heard the complete story. William did exactly what he needed to do. became the common reaction from people who understood Jessica's birthday behavior. Nobody deserves to be called too old by their own granddaughter while funding her expensive lifestyle. The validation helped confirm that my actions were appropriate and necessary. My relationship with Jessica actually improved after she learned important lessons about family respect and financial responsibility. Grandpa, you taught me more about character through consequences than I ever learned from getting everything I wanted, she told me 3 months after losing her credit support. I'm becoming a better person because I finally understand that respect and appreciation matter more than money. Jessica eventually thanked me for teaching her crucial life lessons through firm boundaries rather than endless enabling. Grandpa, I'm glad you cut off my credit cards instead of continuing to reward my disrespectful behavior, she said during a recent dinner. I learned more about appreciation and responsibility from facing real consequences than I ever would have from continued financial support. Her gratitude for my boundary setting showed genuine growth in understanding personal accountability. Looking back on this entire experience, I learned important lessons about family relationships and money that every person should understand. First, generosity toward family members doesn't create obligations to tolerate disrespectful treatment or cruel behavior. Jessica's birthday attack showed her true character, and continuing financial support would have only enabled more entitlement and ingratitude. Second, sometimes permanent consequences are necessary to create real change in people's attitudes toward family and money. Jessica's apologies would never have led to genuine respect if she knew credit support was still available, regardless of her behavior. Only by losing everything did she learn to value relationships over financial expectations. Most importantly, I learned that protecting your dignity improves family relationships for everyone involved. At 76 years old, I finally have the respect and appreciation I always deserved, but had been afraid to demand from entitled family members who took my wealth for granted. Today, Jessica treats me like a valued grandfather instead of some burden to be tolerated while expecting financial benefits. Our conversations focus on genuine family connection rather than her assumptions about my obligations to fund her lifestyle. She learned that family support must be earned through consistent respect and appreciation, not expected because of blood relationships. The granddaughter who called me too old discovered that financial support and family respect work both ways in relationships built on mutual dignity. If you are still here and enjoyed this story, please like this video. It really helps me know you want more content like this. If this story gave you some value or made you think, please share it with your friends or someone who needs to hear this message. If you have any questions or suggestions about this story, please type them in the comments below. I love reading what you think. If you want more stories like this one, please subscribe to this channel. There are many more stories coming. Remember, you teach people how to treat you by setting boundaries and demanding the respect you deserve.